Hey guys, Hawk here. Sorry for the inactivity. I'm getting ready for vacation. Today will be another art review on HraMunro, or however you say it. Sorry if I said it wrong. Disclaimer, this is for constructive purposes. Please do not go attacking anyone I review in any video. Thanks! So I will be reviewing for one of the pieces, trying to draw digitally. Now, something I will say, I don't know if this is supposed to be more semi-realistic, cartoony, realistic. Not too sure on this, so I'll kind of give an overall generalization for that sort of thing. So, like, kind of like a semi-realistic thing. I would kind of advise, first off, to kind of look at torso anatomy. This can go for anything because of the space between the chest, boob, and the arm. It kind of seems unnatural. Usually, boobs don't go quite out like that. I know I kind of do that too, but I need to take my own advice. But usually, what you should do is kind of sketch out, if you don't, sketch out where your body proportions go a little bit first, and then, yeah, there's not really usually that much of a space between the chest and the arms, depending on where it is, especially in this area. It's usually a bit more compact. And usually the most it would be something like this, but it wouldn't be that much of a space. Another thing that I did notice is that there wasn't much of a chin and the eyes seemed to be pretty spaced apart. I might suggest having them a little closer together because if you look at a human face, the eyes, whereas yes, sometimes the bridge of the nose can be a little wide on some people, usually the eyes are usually not that far apart. I mean, yeah, they're far apart enough. They're not connecting or anything. It's not Sonic the Hedgehog, but they usually are a bit closer together. Like when you have a nose, it usually has like a nose bridge. The eyes will be more like here, and then the eyes will have this. I also noticed you try doing some eyelid eyelid stuff here. Um, Usually just a tip. When you're drawing an eye, say you draw an eye, this isn't very good. Uh, Maybe the eyelid would be kind of like this, and then erase a little bit. Ugh, whoops. Just erase a little bit, and it kind of gives more of an illusion, and then you can just kind of shade there. Another thing I noticed is with the background, when so the focus of this piece seems to be on the girl here. When you want something to be on the focus of, say, the person there and not the background, uh, you should make it a less of a saturated color. Do not go in anywhere here if you're going to go for a background. Maybe pops if you want them to actually pops of the color so people can see a little bit into the background if you want that to be a little bit of focus. But instead maybe do something a little less saturated like this. I know you can barely see it, which is kind of the point. Less saturated and the attention would be drawn more onto the girl. Another thing I would recommend when you're doing skin, or again, like for the attention, you want the viewer to have their eyes to rest somewhere. So, again, the pops of color thing, say if you want them to focus on the face, but maybe want them to look at the hair a little bit, have the highlights be of a brighter color, have the eyes be of a saturated color along here, have the necklace charm be like that, and the eyes will be drawn to that, and the viewer will have room for their eyes to rest. That's just a little tip. Something else I noticed is neck length. I used to do this all the time. I sometimes accidentally still do this. It's kind of long. I mean, yes, people can have naturally long necks, and if that's what you were going for, that is completely fine. But usually what you might want to do is make it a little shorter, say just this much, kind of go down like that. Just this much. If you were to like, yeah, just by that little bit, it might look a little bit more proportionate. But you don't have to do that, obviously. I will say good job on having a hairline and knowing where that is. That is a good job. I will congratulate you on that, and I do like the color scheme quite well. It is pretty nice, purplish pinkish red color scheme. Let's see. shading. Okay. Something I would suggest when shading, though, is to kind of say you're having a pinkish purple, maybe shade with a more purpley tone on a different layer, and then perhaps have it like, okay, let me show you. So do it on a different layer, and you see how there's like these little things here. Usually on most systems, it's on several art programs too, such as Metabang or Ibis Paint, IBIS Paint, that's the same thing. Um, they'll have these. Maybe have it like a soft light, and it'll be like a bit more translucent, and it will go well with whatever you're doing. That tends to work for me. Another thing I might suggest is to add a little bit of shading where the eye, like on the eye, just because it's just a little bit more natural. Now, if you're going for a semi-realistic thing, what I advise for shading, say you have like a block, just say you have a block, okay? So when you shade, or because I'm taking this as somewhat cartoony, somewhat realistic with the way that you went for shading with the airbrush and things like that, what I would suggest is to say have your color and then you have perhaps an airbrush, because I can tell you use it and it's completely fine if you want soft look. Um, say you should block in the color first and then go to shading, and don't just use browns or like brownish tones or reddish tone. Even like use little pops of blue because that tends to make it a little bit more 3D looking. If I'm completely honest, it does make it a little bit more realistic, and automatically it looks like, kind of looks a little bit more, obviously it doesn't look completely, but it looks a little bit more 3D if you do that. And just keep working at it and it'll keep looking 3D, and eventually it'll look kind of realistic. Eventually, with lots of work, it will. That's just a little tip. Just kind of use different shades of what, or just block in your colors first when you do that, and just kind of have like a sketch layer, like on a different layer, and have it at low opacity, just so you can kind of see where you're gonna put things, and you can block in color where you need to, and then like have a little bit of line work if you want, and it will just kind of make the piece look a bit more semi-realistic if that's what you're going for, of course. But that's just a tip. Um, so yeah. The next piece will be this piece called Cant Let Go. Now, good job on the background. It's not overly saturated. That's a good job. I That is a very good job. And I do like the effects that you have, and I kind of like the theme. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. One thing I will notice off the bat is kind of the lack of folds in clothing. So when you draw something or you look at something, clothing naturally seems to fold where the parts of the body seems to move the most, say, or like in the joint areas. Say like here, here, the arm areas, and that would have lots of folds. Perhaps in areas that will wrinkle because you're standing and sitting, that would have folds. The knees would have folds. That's just a little bit of a tip. And I also have a tip when you have, say, something that's hanging down, say here, right here you might want to shade, or see how the hair is hanging down. Here would be an area to shade for like shading tips. Kind of use the folds and shading, kind of combine them. That's what I do anyways. That's just the little thing that I do. Good job on the hands here. They are in the right direction. Good job. I will say that's a pretty good job. I will say though, when you have a hand, the little line thingies, the wrinkles, or like the little slit, I don't even know, the spaces in between the fingers, they don't go down that long. Might suggest looking at a little bit of hand anatomy for that, and perhaps shading to signify, say, where a little bit of the knees are, things like that. The arm anatomy here, in this area seems to be a bit better too, and there are wrinkles here. I don't know. As for this one, well, it's supposed to be kind of a shadow, so I won't really comment. Something I did notice in this is, I don't know if this is intentional, but the hair in the forehead, there seems to be a pretty big gap, and it kind of looks a little unnatural. I don't know if it's the head positioning, it probably is. So when you draw, the neck doesn't completely envelop where the head is. Say you have a kind of similar head. The neck would kind of, you have a head, like, because the head does do that. Your neck would kind of be like this, say from this angle. And then the bangs could be like here, and it would just look a little bit more natural. Just kind of that. So you're doing good. I like where your art is going. It is pretty good for starting out. Definitely better than I was. I tell a lot of people this, but it's true. It's better than I was. I would suggest looking at color schemes and color palettes, maybe a little bit of color theory videos out there, perhaps a little bit of facial and general body anatomy. I know there are books on that you can totally look at. I know an artist, I think it's Andrew Loomis. He has some pretty good anatomy. I would also suggest perhaps you can even look in like fashion magazines or something like that to get a look at how like shading is, or like even makeup tutorials like on people, how the shading goes, and look at pictures of real life or go into real life and like just see how things are kind of shaded like different ways, and look how like folds and things work. Just kind of experiment with different styles, all these sorts of things. It will definitely help you in the future with art. I like where you're going. You're doing a good job. You're going good places. Keep improving. This is Hawk out. Hope you could get something from this.